Thank you very much for joining us once again for this edition of Computer Insider. I was recently out to dinner with some friends of mine from university, and in the midst of our chit-chat, a strange discussion came up. It seems that at least two of us had over the last several months fallen into the same, let's call it, trap in terms of using the internet. Here's what happened. Both of us were working on web pages separately, and we both needed to have images to put on our pages. And I suppose, like many people building websites, we both ended up going to Google Images and searching for pictures to insert onto our pages. Interestingly enough, both of us had assumed that the images we found from Google Images were in the public domain. As it turns out, that's not necessarily the case. I think it's important to point out at this point that I'm not a lawyer and am in no way attempting to offer you legal advice or direction. If you're looking for the best course of action in any legal matter, you should always consult with a lawyer who's trained on these issues. That said, I am a long-term user of the internet, and when something seems to be just plain wrong, maybe it should be part of the public consciousness. At any rate, what happened was a short time after the web pages were actually posted on the internet, each of us were contacted by an individual who claimed to be the copyright holder for those pictures. The letter I received was quite specific, saying the images were not part of the public domain, I had violated their copyright, and I had a financial obligation to the copyright holder. I found out from the other person at the dinner, who ran into the same situation, that they had been contacted and demanded $600 in royalty payments. He did contact a lawyer who did advise him that there is really not a whole lot you can do about it, of course presuming the person that sent the pictures was in fact the copyright holder. He is entitled to be compensated for his images. What really bothered me about this whole situation was the fact that this appears to be a setup. Again, I want to emphasize that this is just an opinion, but it does seem to me to be very strange that somehow copyrighted material was distributed onto what some people believe is the public domain via Google, and that information was not only being used by unsuspecting people, but the people who hold the copyrights appear to have the technology to be able to scour the internet and track down any people using those images and then pursue them for compensation. In fact, and again I have to point out that as far as I know, the person who holds the copyright of any material has the right to demand whatever payments they can. But in the real world of digital photography, and being a contributor to several libraries myself, compensation for any one picture is generally calculated in pennies, not dollars, let alone hundreds of dollars. Somewhere in the back of my mind I've got the strange idea that what's happened is that some people, possibly of less scrupulous thoughts, have produced a series of images and coded them with some sort of tracking system, released them, not necessarily into the public domain, but released them to the internet in such a way as to lure unsuspecting users and then to pursue them to get money in compensation for the copyrights and what does appear to be fairly excessive payments. If this in fact is what's happening, it would probably make a fairly interesting argument in court to show that people had leaked those images onto the internet deliberately, concealing to some level the fact the images were copyrighted, and to have actually made this into a substantial business operation. In my case, I explained that I was using the images because it was my understanding that it was part of the public domain. As it is always my intention not to violate other persons' copyrights, we immediately stopped using the images and apologized for the misunderstanding. They did send me an email saying that I owed them money, but to this point there's been no further subsequent correspondence whatsoever, so we're presuming at this stage that there will be no claims. However, not being located in the United States, I would think it would be a fairly expensive proposition for anyone to take somebody in this country to court, considering the probabilities of them being able to win a judgment in court and then subsequently collect any money in the process. I wanted to let you know about this because I believe there are a lot of people who presume that images they find on Google are royalty free and they can use them whenever and however they please. Knowing that there are others on the internet who appear to be in the business of distributing material and then actively pursuing compensation may give you an opportunity to further check to see if any notices of copyright are present and give you time to consider exactly what you'd say if one day you received an email saying that you were in violation of copyrighted material. Reporting for Computer Insider, I'm Bob Pritchard.